Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we are going to be taking a look at how best to defeat the Grandmaster, how the fight goes, what each phase does, and by end of it hopefully you will be able to deal with this guy relatively easily. So the first phase looks more complicated on paper than it is. The entire fight is based on these tokens of competence and tokens of blunder. Whenever you kind of complete a mini mission, you gain a token of competence, and that increases your damage output whenever Grandmaster goes wounded. He goes wounded at a certain point during the fight, and when you get tokens of blunder, if you get 5 of them at normal circumstances, and you basically kind of die. So blunder is bad, competence is good. And phase 1 by far is the simplest one. There are 3 kind of sets of action that Grandmaster can ban. Every time you use a banned action, you gain a token of blunder. And once all 3 sets are banned, then he gains bar power, and after that special attack he gets wounded. So the banned actions are parry, light hits, and dexterity. So the easiest way to deal with this is just start the fight by parry and medium light medium combos up until a point where a light hit gets banned, and at that point just go parry medium medium up until a point when parry gets banned. And as soon as you have parry and light attacks banned, then you just want to kind of like dex his attacks, bait out at level 1, and after you complete all 3 actions of the level 1, which is either get hit, block, or evade, it's important to know what each of those icons mean, then he gets wounded and you deal a lot of damage, and you can just repeat this cycle if you wish. This is by far like the simplest way how to deal with the phase 1. Obviously there is an additional ability for you to gain the tokens of competence whenever you perform an intercept, and later on I'm going to showcase how doing that can shorten the time you spend in this phase. But all in all, it's kind of all about just do your parry light medium combos, get your parry, get your light hit banned, and then dex on purpose up until such time as he bans the dexterity, and then he goes wounded. Your damage increase might not be as significant as if you try to intercept like crazy, but this is far more easier to execute. So now this time he banned my parry first, so that is not ideal, so I cannot parry, but I still can go in with my light medium light medium combos. He banned dex, so now I just kind of need him to ban my lights. Unfortunately I did perform a dex there, so I have these 3 blunder tokens on me. However, that does not mean too much because all of these blunder tokens get removed after I successfully complete a phase like we did just now. And as I mentioned before, you can intercept. You can manage to do a lot of intercepts in a row, and if you do so, then you can pretty much get out of this phase in like 1 set. As you can see here, I'm just doing a medium hit because the lights are banned, and I'm landing in a whole bunch of intercepts. I have 10 tokens of competence. I'm about to bait out his level 1. And when I do that, basically I'm going to be hitting like an absolute tank. Now there, if you do not hit him within 10 seconds, then you start to kind of degenerate, kind of like mild version of brute force. But that isn't kind of like too important to the fight itself. It's just something you need to know of. In the next phase, I'm going to try my best to explain the level 1s a bit better. But next phase is a very similar in the sense. In the next phase, Grandmaster goes stun immune, so that's a bit annoying. He also starts to gain power as you are striking him. Note that his power gain is significantly increased if he's above bar power, but periodically he's gonna kind of tell you what he wants you to do and issue you challenges. These challenges are with an attack, land a critical, hit and gain a buff, inflict damage over time debuff, or perform an intercept. On demand each time you comply and do the challenge in the set allocated time, you gain a token of competence. If you fail, you gain a token of blunder. And most importantly, once each of these challenges has cycled at least once, he gets in the wounded state. So kind of it doesn't matter what you do in the fight so long as you're still alive. Once all of these challenges have cycled, he's gonna go wounded. So you kind of simply have to last long enough. But if you're playing fast and aggressive, you have more chances to gain tokens of competence by evading or complying with his level 1s and deal more damage when all of these challenges actually cycle. Real quick before we get back to the gameplay bit, whiff an attack means that you simply want to execute a hit without launching, without touching the Grandmaster. So typically that's easiest accomplished when you kind of dash back and simply tap on your screen for a light attack. We can see that multiple times in the fight here. And as we can see here, first challenge was gain a buff. A-Gun gets a buff basically whenever he strikes opponent. So that was an easy one to accomplish. And the one that is kind of like the most annoying one in this phase is the inflict damage over time debuff. Since A-Gun does not have access to damage over time debuff on his level 1, which is kind of like the power level that you're capped off, that is a challenge you will automatically fail with a whole lot of champions. And it can be something you might want to take in consideration when choosing which champion you're going to use for this fight. At the end of the video, I'm gonna give my opinions on which champions are gonna do great, but truth of the matter is that pretty much any champion can be used to do this fight. This is much more about you doing the fight right than which champion you bring in. And other quick explanation on the level 1, because I haven't done so yet, is very simple. So Grandmaster's first beam of level 1 typically is unblockable and is something that you do wish to evade fully. Now once you evade Grandmaster's first beam, there are 3 icons at top of the Grandmaster's kind of like health bar, at the bottom of Grandmaster's health bar, which indicate in which order you have tasks to perform. If you see the red icon with a fist on it, that means that you have to get hit by that attack on purpose. It's not going to do any damage, so don't worry. If you see the blue shield icon, it means that you have to block that part of the level 1. And if you see the green running man, then you have to await that hit. And so he launches these 3 cubes at you, and if you do all the 3 actions right, you will always get like 3 tokens of competence. So it's extremely kind of like simple mechanic that requires you to pay 100% attention and always kind of like see what's happening. So whenever he launches at level 1, await the beam, and then check what's happening up there with those icons. So in this case, it's block, get hit, block, and you have enough time to punish Grandmaster's level 1. That is also an important thing to note. Whichever action you perform, whether it's dex the last one, block the last one, or get hit by the last one, there is enough time for an opening to go and hit Grandmaster and keep him pressed against the wall. I think a large factor of success in this fight is keeping Grandmaster to his wall, doing dashback intercepts, being aggressive overall, all in all. So as you can see, other than that, this phase is relatively simple. I cannot obviously inflict damage or time debuffs, which is something I just have to take on the chin and get that token of blunder. But at the same time, we can see that since we avoided a lot of level 1s, we are dealing some insane damage, and this phase pretty much can just fly by if you are being aggressive. You kind of need to cycle through about 2-3 sets. It really depends on the champion and your champion's damage output, but that is all you have to do. You kind of have to play in the rules. Block, dex, evade, intercept, get critical hits, get buffs. It's important to note that dexterity is also a buff, so pretty much any champion can gain that mission complete. And other than that, this phase isn't too bad. It's by far like the longest, the largest phase health pool wise, but it's relatively simple. You just need to push the Grandmaster to level 1s, away those level 1s, and or get hit by them. And then when he goes wounded eventually, and it's important also to remember that he does go wounded eventually. No matter how many blunders you have, no matter how many tokens of competence you have, it has nothing to do with when he goes wounded. He goes wounded when all of these challenges have cycled at least once, and if you have survived up until that point. And yeah, so at this point, I think we are quite close to him going wounded. There we go. And as soon as he does, we deal some incredibly large amount of damage, and he... Okay, and now we are at the third phase, arguably the hardest one. Basically, Grandmaster changes the method he gains power, and he starts to gain power kind of like Doctor Strange. So it doesn't matter how much you hit him, he simply starts to gain power slowly over time. So that is important to note. Also, another thing that's changing is the challenges. Challenges now got a bit more complex. They can include strike into block, which is relatively easy, perform backdashes, which is super easy, knock him down, which can be a bit complex at times, stand still, which is a relatively easy one to perform. Well-timed blocks can be quite annoying within the allocated time limit. And these are basically the new challenges. And once again, after 5 challenges, how passed, even if they have been the same, then he's gonna go wounded. So he goes wounded after every 5 challenges. But there is a catch. And the catch is that every 42.5 seconds, summoner's controls are reversed for 8.5 seconds. So every 40 seconds, basically, you have 8 seconds where you have to play with inverted controls, and typically that is also there about the time where he goes wounded, or he goes wounded as you kind of like survive your inverted controls. Now, I personally like to store up my power. That's right, you are allowed to have a normal power gain and get to level 3 in this phase. I like to store up my power for the time my inverted controls are about to kick in, and as they are gonna get there, I can launch my special 3, and that kind of serves the time for me to recalibrate myself and not get confused by the controls getting inverted. And that is kind of like the key strategy I typically use to do this fight successfully. And now I haven't done this fight too often. Actually, this is the first time I touched the Grandmaster fight since I explored 6.4. But yes, saving up to level 3 and using it right at the moment when inverted controls trigger is definitely something that helps a lot, at least for me. I assume similar effect could be by simply launching a special attack as well, just because that gives you those valuable seconds to understand what you have to do. In this case, it also turns out that he got wounded in this phase, and we did a nice chunk of damage. Now, while the controls are inverted, for most part, you just kind of try to stay away from the Grandmaster. You don't want to show off or be too fancy, right? And now, again, my controls went back to normal. I had to strike his block, which is fine. And those missions are relatively simple ones. The one where you have to parry him 3 times within 8 seconds can be relatively difficult to execute. Sometimes it's best just to ignore that one. Now there I went for a risky play to knock him down with a gun. He could have launched his level 1 and it would have been all over. That definitely was a mistake. But all in all, this fight is all about reading what you have to do and then doing it whilst fighting an opponent. And I like the fight. The design is great. I think it's a fantastic fight. We can see that there is no inhuman skill required. It's all about receiving information and processing it and executing the correct actions. It's not about champion. It's not about roster. It's not insane kind of like a skill requirement, because the tasks, the missions are fairly simple things most of us can execute on demand relatively easily. So I do enjoy it. I do like it. Now there I did make a mistake. I got smacked a bit, but luckily we didn't die. I have 4% left. This wasn't a one shot, by the way. I used a revive somewhere along in the middle, in between phase 3 and 2. And I'm gonna use a different champion to finish the fight off, just so everybody knows. I haven't had like a proper practice against Grandmaster yet. This was the first time I touched that fight since the quest came out, basically. But hey, we didn't do too bad. So anyways, the last phase. The last phase is arguably the simplest one. And the name of the game there is to simply survive. That is your only mission. When he enters that phase, then he goes unstoppable and unblockable for X amount of seconds, and yeah, you just have to survive for 18 seconds. Only thing that you're allowed to do is perform an intercept, and that intercept will disable that unstoppable for 1 hit, as we're gonna find out where I check it out later. So that is it. You just need to dance about, be careful, and survive for 18 seconds. Or you can bring in kind of like a sturdy enough champion that doesn't die for 18 seconds, or whichever case. You just have to stay alive. There's nothing you have to do, no missions, nothing else realistically. You just need to stay alive. If you make a mistake, it's fine. The main thing is just survive up until that 18-second mark, and as soon as you do, you get 3 bars of power. Just use your special 3 and you have won the fight. And that is it. That is pretty much Grandmaster done. Once again, any champion works great. Suicides are not welcome and or encouraged because maintaining health is vital. As for what champions do best or what champions do great so far, Aegon is a great option, but keep in mind you will always be having to blunder damage or time mission. Morningstar is arguably the best option because Morningstar's energy damage from level 1 or level 2 counts as damage over time effect in this fight, and she is extremely sturdy and can heal throughout the fight, so Morningstar is a great option. Doom is a great option just because he has easy access to damage over time effects. He's sturdy. Those unblockable level 1s will help you knock down the opponent easily. And same as chaining your heavy attack to your combo will help you knock down the opponent easily. So yeah, Doom is great for this. Captain America Infinity War, sturdy, access to bleed on level 1, so that still works in that fight as well, that phase. So he's great for this. But all in all, honestly, any champion can do the fight. You do not have to bring in like specific counters for this guy. And yeah, so hopefully I have helped at least a couple of you to understand and be able to deal with this final boss of Act 6 a little bit better. And if I have, if you think this video was helpful, then definitely please do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that sub button if you haven't already, and share it with your friends, share it with your alliance mates, share it with everybody else. But that will be me done for now. I hope you guys are having a great day, and I'll catch you guys soon. See ya.